Imagine the inside of a 1985 Buick at 7 in the evening. The vinyl seats are still warm from the afternoon sun, and they've got that smell, half plastic, half something like a hot dashboard and old French fries. Somebody's got a mixtape jammed in the deck, the kind with a pencil nearby just in case it needs respooling. 4 teenagers are crammed in, windows down, and the whole car smells like drugstore cologne and gas station coffee. Tonight, they are driving to a concert 3 towns over. None of them have ever been there before. None of them have a phone that can tell them where there even is. What they have is a folded gas station map with a coffee ring on it, and a napkin with directions scrawled in someone's mother's handwriting. This is the story of what it meant to get lost on purpose, in an era when getting lost was simply part of the plan, because there was no other way to arrive. Let's set the scene a little more, because the details matter. The map itself was a production. You didn't just open it, you wrestled with it. Those gas station road maps folded in on themselves in a specific, mysterious order that nobody ever quite remembered, and refolding them wrong was basically a rite of passage. Whoever was riding shotgun became the navigator, which meant they had one job: hold the map up to the dome light, squint at a web of thin red and blue lines, and try to reverse engineer their location using nothing but a gas station's marketing department's idea of cartography. Half the time, the map was 5 years out of date. New roads weren't on it. Old roads had changed names. It didn't matter. You worked with what you had, and then there was the napkin. This deserves its own moment of reverence, because the handwritten napkin direction was an entire genre of American folk literature. Someone's older cousin, or a friend's mom, or a guy at the record store had been there before, and they'd scratch out something like this: go straight past the Sunoco, take a left at the old red barn, you can't miss it, it's been abandoned since the 70s, and if you hit the McDonald's, you've gone too far, turn around. That was it. That was the entire GPS system. Landmarks did the work that satellites do now. A town's identity was etched into a mental map made of barns, feed stores, dead traffic lights, and fast food signs that blinked on right around dusk. Here's the part that's almost impossible to explain to a teenager today: there was no net under any of this. If you missed the turn at the barn, you didn't get a calm voice recalculating your route. You got silence, 4 confused teenagers, and a rapidly darkening sky. You pulled over. You argued about whether that last turn was really a turn or just a driveway. Somebody insisted they remembered the way, even though they'd never actually been there, because confidence was the only navigation tool anyone had left. And if that confidence ran out completely, there was exactly one option: you needed to find a payphone. The payphone was the actual safety net, and it came with its own strict rules of engagement. First, you needed a quarter, and not just any quarter, an actual physical quarter, sitting in your pocket or the bottom of the car's ashtray, because there was no other way to make that call happen. Second, you needed to physically locate one, usually outside a gas station or a diner, lit by a buzzing fluorescent light with a phone book missing half its pages. And third, this is the important part: calling home meant admitting defeat. It wasn't a casual check-in. It was a confession. You'd feed in the quarter, dial the number you'd memorized because it was the only one that mattered, and wait for your mother or father to pick up the landline, and you'd have to say the words, "We're lost." That sentence cost you something. It wasn't just information, it was an admission that the plan had failed and you needed a grown-up to fix it. And this is where the story pivots into something bigger than just directions. Because think about what was actually happening the second that car pulled out of the driveway. There was no phone in anyone's pocket broadcasting a little blinking dot back to a worried parent's screen. There was no way to check in every 20 minutes, no way to see that the car had stopped moving, no way to silently supervise from a distance. The moment those 4 teenagers left the driveway, they were, in the fullest possible sense, gone. Off the grid. Untraceable. Their parents knew the destination and the approximate time they'd be home, and after that, it was faith, plain and simple. That gap, that total, unmonitored gap between leaving and returning, was where something important got built. Because when you knew that no one was watching, and no one could rescue you with a tap on a screen, you had to actually solve your own problems. You had to make a decision at that fork in the road with incomplete information and live with it. You had to talk your way through an argument in a car with 3 other panicking teenagers about which direction felt right. You had to walk up to a stranger at a gas station and ask, with real vulnerability, "Hey, do you know how to get to the fairgrounds from here?" That interaction, a teenager asking an adult stranger for help, face to face, no algorithm involved, was a small but real rehearsal for the kind of resourcefulness that adulthood eventually demands in bulk. And here's the thing about that payphone call home. Yes, it felt like defeat in the moment. But it was also the entire system working exactly as it should. It taught a very specific, very useful lesson. It is okay to get lost, as long as you know how to ask for help when you truly need it. Not before you truly need it, not at the first sign of confusion, but at the actual threshold where independence runs out. That's a skill. Knowing the difference between I can figure this out and I actually need to call someone is something an entire generation practiced, out loud, on payphones, without even realizing they were practicing anything at all. Compare that to now, and the shift is almost uncomfortable to look at directly. A teenager today pulls out of the driveway with a phone that already knows exactly where they're going, exactly how long it will take, and exactly which turns to make, spoken aloud in a calm, patient voice that never once judges them for missing an exit. And their parents, if they choose to, can watch that little dot move across a map in real time from their kitchen table. The vulnerability is gone. The landmark is gone. The barn, the McDonald's, the feed store, none of it needs to be remembered because none of it needs to be found. The app finds it. That's not a small change. That's the quiet disappearance of an entire category of experience, the experience of being truly, temporarily unreachable, and having to trust your own judgment because it was the only tool in the car. Getting lost used to be an event. It had stakes, it had a little bit of fear in it, and it ended in a story you tell for years. Remember when we ended up in that farmer's driveway at midnight and had to ask him for directions back to the highway? Nobody tells that story anymore, because nobody gets that lost anymore. The blue dot never lets you. There's a strange kind of grief in that, even for people who never lived through it firsthand, because it points to something larger about how independence used to be built. It wasn't handed over all at once at 18. It was built in small increments, drive by drive, wrong turn by wrong turn, quarter by quarter, fed into a payphone outside some gas station 3 towns from home. Each of those wrong turns was a tiny rehearsal for the bigger uncertainties of adult life, the ones that don't come with a recalculating voice either. So the next time you glance at a folded paper map in an antique shop, or spot an old glass and metal payphone booth rusting outside a gas station that closed years ago, know that you're not just looking at outdated technology. You're looking at the physical remains of a whole education system, one that taught patience, humility, and problem-solving through nothing more than a scrawled napkin, and a healthy fear of arriving 3 hours late to a concert. It's gone now, mostly. But for a little while, getting lost was exactly how an entire generation learned how to find their way.